And joining us now in the studio is Zack Polanski, Deputy Leader of the Green Party, joining myself and Zoë Grünewald, our new co-host, who's joining us for today. Zack, I think a pretty good night for you guys at local election results.
Yeah, I'm still grinning from ear to ear. So the last 4 elections, we have quadrupled our number of seats across the country, and this election again saw historic gains. And what I really love is the historic gains are in places that might not be expected necessarily. So in Hastings, we went from the 4th largest party to the number 1 largest party. That was just in 1 election cycle. In Bristol, where we're going to be looking to get our next MP in Bristol Central, we now, or the Green Party now have every single seat in Bristol Central has gone green. Now, there's a fair challenge that people sometimes vote different nationally to the way they do locally, but you can see already that if everyone votes the same way that they just did last week at the national election, Carla Denyer will be the next MP for Bristol Central. And all I would say to people is, if you believe that we don't have a cost of living crisis, but actually we have an inequality crisis where the richest people are doing better than ever before, whilst those who are poor are struggling to heat their homes and put food on the table, if you believe there should be a ceasefire in Gaza and you want to stand by a party who has been consistent in that and principled in that, if you think we should have a wealth tax, so we're taking the money away from the wealthiest assets, multimillionaires and billionaires, and putting that back into your public services. At this point, who else are you going to vote for? The Green Party are the very obvious option. We're not being complacent. I'll be out there all the time fighting for every single vote. But I think the route to Green Party success is becoming clearer by the day.
Yeah, but you could find yourself in a position where you turn into a protest vote. That's the worry, is it not? That you know, people who are pretty pissed off with Labour will come to you. People who might be annoyed at Conservatives on their general green policy, like environmental Tories, if you will, could come to you. How do you transition that from being a party of protest, for example, to a party that could actually make a substantive difference to the policy agenda in Westminster?
Well, when people vote in protest because they're sick of the 2 old parties and they want to say, we want some difference, we want environmental, social, racial and economic justice, that's not really a vote of protest. That's a vote of saying, I'm putting confidence in this party. Now, if we had a few councillors, then I would argue that's a protest vote. But when you have a serious number of councillors, every single election, your number of councillors is massively growing. We've had hundreds of people join the party in the last few days. We're the only national party whose membership is growing. I think the idea of it being a protest vote is a storyline and a narrative that's fading away very quickly. Are we a party that's growing quickly? Are there going to be challenges about how quickly we're growing? Absolutely, but we're ready to take on those challenges. And I think our new membership are too.
But you're not just a protest vote, are you? Because people also vote at local elections locally more than they would do at a general election. So at a general election, people think about who they might want Prime Minister. But at locals, people think about their councils, their streets, their bins, their waterways. You say if people vote like they did at local elections in a general election, you would see gains for the Greens. But people don't do that. So if you can't get those kind of votes across at a general election, how else will you influence the Westminster agenda?
So I think the very obvious thing to say is we are going to have a Labour government. That's quite clear at this point. Are people comfortable with a Keir Starmer authoritarian government where he has this huge majority, where it's very clear already, even in opposition, he is not governing from the centre or even the left, he is moving to the right. I could say this anyway, but he's just accepted a Tory MP with open arms. It's very clear what Keir Starmer's agenda is.
I was just going to push back on that, and you said the Natalie Elphicke thing, and I'm done, so you carry on.
Well, there we go. And so the question is, do you want a Labour government, or do you want a Labour government with Green MPs pushing Keir Starmer towards a more progressive agenda? And this isn't some kind of fantasy, by the way. I just got elected again in the London Assembly for a second term. Sadiq Khan regularly, to his credit, says out loud that I and my fellow Greens have pushed his position on things, that we have changed his mind on things, that due to Green Party pressure, the Labour mayor is a better mayor, a greener mayor. Now, do I have objections to some of the things he does? Absolutely, clearly, otherwise he'd be in our party. But I think the idea that Green Party politicians can push Labour in power to better positions that more represent what people in this country want, to more justice positions that are, yes, both green, but also for social justice, is something that's been well proved.
So what's the best case scenario for the Green Party at a general election?
So we're targeting at least 4 MPs. So that's in Bristol Central, Brighton, where we already hold, North Herefordshire and Waveney Valley. But also I want to see even more MPs than that. We've realised under the cruel first past the post system that if we try and target everywhere, we end up with very, very few MPs. So we've realised we have to be ruthless about the areas we target. That all being said, though, people might say, well, what's the point of voting Green if I'm not in one of those 4 seats? Every single Green vote that is counted across the country sends a very clear message to Keir Starmer at the next election that our policies of taxation on the rich, of our climate emergency, our policies on that, of tackling the inequality crisis, of proportional representation, all of those things, every Green vote adds up to that.
Can I ask you about, I hate this kind of politics, but I have to ask you because it's the reality of the situation. You said you're targeting four MPs. I would posit that if you win 4 seats at the next general election, you'll be dancing up and down in the studio if you were here, right? 4 MPs isn't going to influence Sir Keir Starmer. It's just not, given what we expect to happen in Westminster. People who might be angry at Sir Keir Starmer, but are furious with this Conservative government and just want to see done with them, are going to be looking and going, if I vote Green and I'm not in one of these 4 seats, my vote's wasted. I might as well give it to Labour, make sure that we get a change of government, and we can deal with that as it comes. It's a cruel, undemocratic system. I get that. But it's the reality. If people want to get rid of the Tories, unless you're in those 4 seats, you're wasting your vote.
I think this is a ludicrous argument. If people want to get rid of the Tories, don't have a party that accepts Tory MPs. They're literally accepting that right now.
Zack, stop bringing that up. I don't have a response.
I also think I would defy anyone to look at what Caroline Lucas does in Parliament and say she hasn't changed the national conversation. Every time she stands up and she's principled, she speaks with authenticity, with care, she makes valid arguments based on evidence. That's how you change your politics. I would say you change your politics just having one person doing that rather than having 50 or 100 MPs who are doing nothing, who are just obeying the party whip, and who won't even stand up on the basic humanitarian crisis of our time to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. I don't want to keep coming back to Gaza, but I think it's an incredibly important litmus test about what these Labour MPs are ready to stand for and what they won't stand up for. And I think that's been laid transparent and bare. And if people want principled politics, they need to vote for the Green
we're going to
Party.
get to Gaza. I just want to, at this point, say, look, I hate that I had to ask that question because it's so ludicrous that people might support your agenda, might support everything that you're saying, but feel like they can't vote for you because then their votes...
I would say the local elections have changed this, though. We've proven even under first past the post we can and do win. So it's about taking that principle from local to national, which I think we will do.
I think Zoe said it in as we introduced you in as well, that PR would be a huge thing. Actually upending, for the Greens, upending this, what I believe now to be an undemocratic system.
Absolutely, but we have the system we have, so we've got to win under that system, and we're proving we can, so let's keep doing that.
Okay, I'm gonna, with Zoe's permission, I'm just going to ask you about Gaza because it's been a huge issue. I've seen it all over your social media and the responses to the Green Party. I was shocked at how many Muslim votes went to the Green Party, and Gaza isn't just a Muslim issue. I understand that, but it is a principal issue that Muslims care about predominantly. We saw Muslim votes as much as 18% swing towards the Green Party. Your position in Gaza has been one that's probably closer to the hearts of Muslim voters and is now seeing an electoral result in that. What do you think the next steps are for the Green Party on the issue of Gaza, ceasefire, arms embargo, etc.?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is, and I hear this caveat in your question, that it's not just a Muslim issue. I think anyone who cares about humanitarianism, compassion, and wants to stop violence is speaking out against Gaza. And from the mainstream media, I'm not including you guys in that, although I'm a fan of the show, it's sometimes presented as a contentious or controversial position, but actually we'd be taking this position anyway. But the polling is really clear too.
Yes, it is.
And when you're out in the streets, it's really clear too. People do not want to see this violence continue. And we always need to be careful when we talk about Gaza. There's obviously nuance to that. So we need a ceasefire, we need a release of all hostages, and we need a ban of arms trades to Israel. I've been saying for the past few months that, you know, the government and the Labour Party have been complicit in what has been described as a plausible genocide. I'd go stronger as that. They're not just complicit. At this point, they're enabling it. We have seen what is happening in Gaza. We are giving and selling those weapons. And actually, until we come to the point where we're ready to take a principled position and say that has to stop, I think we do need to be really clear about what this country is enabling in its government. And of course, the Labour Party aren't the opposition, but we've seen time and time again that if the opposition do not oppose, then of course the government will get away with it. That's not just imaginary. We can go back to 2008, where the government, along with the Labour opposition, did call for a ceasefire. The United Nations, America then abstained. Israel then declared a ceasefire. So there's evidence for how this can make difference. In terms of where does this need to go in the future, I'd say wider than Gaza, I've really been enjoying building relationships with the Muslim community. When we launched a new Muslim Greens group where I went in Manchester just a few months ago, they talked about how this wasn't just a Gaza relationship, but actually all through the faith as well. There's lots of links to environmental and social justice. I'm one of 5 Jewish people who have been in leadership positions in British politics, and I know in my own religion there's this idea called tikkun olam, which means healing the world or mending the world, which for me is another way of talking about environmental and social justice. So whether you're a person of faith or not of faith. I think bringing these communities together, whereas the far right want to divide us and create tensions, I think there's a real importance here to bring people together. And with that, the final caveat I just want to say is the reaction we've seen from the Labour Party to this, where I've received, or the leadership have received, letters from the Jewish Labour movement. First of all, the way that the Labour Party have dealt with Islamophobia in their party is horrendous. The way that they hijacked the racism towards Diane Abbott, but didn't actually call out their own MPs, they just used it for political gain, has been horrendous. So we need to take anti-Semitism and Islamophobia really, really seriously. But I would just gently, and not that gently, say to the Labour Party that they ultimately need to make sure they've cleared their own party of racism before pointing fingers at other parties. And to see Peter Mandelson all over the media trying to trash the Green Party, I think was so blatantly political and transparent that actually it has backfired on the Labour Party. And I would suggest that they find a cleaner way to do politics that's actually about policy rather than trying to smear parties, because we won't stand for it.
And I just want to ask you on this issue of Islamophobia and racism, there was what I consider a hugely Islamophobic front page about Muthan Ali, one of your newly elected councillors, who shouted Allahu Akbar, which means God is great. And he's come under investigation by the Green Party. Can I just confirm what he's being investigated for?
Yes, so we have a huge problem with Islamophobia in this country, and shouting Allahu Akbar is completely acceptable, and the idea that that would ever be a problem.
So that's not what he's being investigated for?
That is not what he's being investigated for.
That's what I wanted to make sure of. Okay, thank you so much. That was Zack Polanski, Deputy Leader of the Green Party, who's joined us in the studio.